In this video, we're going to introduce experiment and talk about the difference between an experiment and an observation. And then more importantly, we're going to look at the parts of an experiment and some of the different variables that go into making an experiment. So let's start actually with what makes an experiment different from an observation. And a term that I like to use a lot is this word active. Okay. Um, an observation is passive in nature, meaning that you're watching what your subjects are doing or your individuals are doing, and then you're measuring whether it be a quantitative variable or a qualitative variable. Whereas with experiments, you're being more active in collecting your data. And when we say we're being active, we are manipulating our subject. Okay, and subjects are the individuals that are used in the experiment. In observations, we call them individuals. In experiments, we call them subjects. Now, what does this term manipulating mean? It means we are administering a treatment. And a treatment can be a condition, it can be medicine. Um, Basically, it's anything you're requiring people in your experiment to do that they ordinarily wouldn't do in their everyday life. So, some examples again, you could have medicine, you could have um, a condition, you could have a program. Okay, those are all examples of treatment. So, for example, with medicine, if I wanted to talk about the effects of taking aspirin on your cholesterol, and I administered that aspirin to some of the people in the experiment, I'm requiring them to do it. I'm manipulating them, and I'm changing their everyday life so they take this medicine. A condition could be studying the effects of sleep on performance on an exam, and I require half of my class to get at least 8 hours of sleep, and the other half of the class to get less than 8 hours of sleep. And I compare the results. That in this case, I'm requiring a condition. I'm requiring them to get 8 hours of sleep every single night. A program could be like a diet. I always think of as an experiment. Probably the most frequent experiment we do as humans is a diet, right? We want to see when we change our lifestyle and we change our meals. We want to see how much that affects the outcome of losing weight and getting in shape. Okay, so in all those examples, we talked about a treatment, but then also in our explanation, we kind of get into what the variables are for any experiment. Okay, and how I like to think of an experiment, basic way to kind of diagram this, you have the before, you have the after, and then everything in between is your treatment, your control, and I like to say your comparison. All right. So typically half of your people in the experiment will get the treatment, half people will get a control, and you're going to compare them, and then you finish with the after. So if we start with the before, the after, a more technical term for the before variable is something called the explanatory. All right, so for example, um, an explanatory variable for the experiment of um, doing the Atkins diet, right? My explanatory variable here would be, we'll say, limiting carb intake in diet. Okay, that's what I'm trying to explain. I'm trying to see if by doing that, it'll affect my response variable of losing weight. All right, so my response variable in this case would be weight loss. All right, and I can do that experiment and again see if it works out to show whether or not limiting carbohydrate intake has an effect on weight loss. Okay, um, so this would be the experiment. I'm sorry, the explanatory variable, limiting carbohydrate intake. The response variable would be weight loss, and then the actual treatment, in this case, we'll put the treatment in the middle, would be the actual administering of the Atkins diet. Okay.